The most valuable, often most underused assets inside any dealership today, data.
I've seen examples of databases where 70% of the database has got the wrong MOT date. Probability is that you'll lose almost £6,000 worth of profit from that customer because they're not then going to come back for next lot of service. Those systems are now out there to be able to help with all of that, but you can't do any of that unless you data.
In the Tech Talk, we'll explore how technology is transforming car and motorhome dealerships today.
I'm Simon Verona. This podcast is sponsored by DMS Navigator, the system for making dealerships more efficient, more profitable, and delivering better customer service, a mild companion. Today, we're talking about the most valuable and often most underused assets inside any dealership today, data. Every dealership has data, customer records, vehicle records, service histories, MOT dates, finance information, you name it, they've got it. But the real question is, what do the dealers do with that data and how do they use it? As dealers start to look at things like AI and automation and everything like that, the quality of their data becomes ever critical. So to help explore this question and how dealers can improve what they do today, I'm delighted to welcome from Autodata Solutions with me today. Welcome, John.
Hello.
I'll start off, John. I'm guessing many people here won't know who you are or what you do. So give us a checkered history and what you do today.
Well, I suppose luckily, based on today's activity, I am a self-confessed data geek. So I have been in the automotive world all of my working life. Started 25 years ago.
You're making me feel old now.
With Vauxhall and part of the whole GM Europe world. And then got into data through Experian. Had 7 years with Experian and then into the CAP HPI or CAP at the time. And then Solera took it over and became CAP HPI. And I actually met Mark Basford at Experian. And then I met Amanda Morgan at CAP HPI. And the three of us decided that once we got out of the corporate world of Solera, that we should set up on our own. Mm-hmm. And this is a very public announcement, I suppose. We've never gone so public with this, but we've said in the past that nobody knows more about automotive data in the UK than the three of us. So that's a very public statement now that we can't go back on.
I think it's pretty justified from my experience.
Well, hopefully. So we founded Autodata Solutions 5 years ago, and we set it up to try and help the UK automotive data or the UK automotive sector with data, anything to do with data, and that is we'll talk about it a lot today. It's such an important element, and people either don't know what to do with it. They have so much of it. There are areas that they know don't work. They know they should be doing more of it, but they don't do because they don't really know what to do with it. And we'll talk a lot today about it being in the too difficult pile. And they go that whether that's data cleansing or whether that is safety recall, or whether that is out and out data queries about valuations, or data with regard to MOTs. I'm sure we'll talk about all of those things today, but it's all areas that people really struggle with.
I think data is a vast subject, but when you first talk to dealers, what's the first thing that they actually they come to you with? What do they perceive their largest problem actually is?
They know they have problems with data. They just don't know how to do anything about it. And that's the main problem. They might be sat on a database of 50,000, 100,000, 250,000 records, but they don't know the size of the either the problem or the opportunity. See it either way, because it's as we said already, it's in the too difficult path. Mm-hmm. And data cleansing, I suppose, has been one of those bits that we've really looked at a lot because it's an area that has failed in the past. It's been too difficult. Mm-hmm. And as from a DNS Navigator perspective, of you have this huge database, but exporting all that data, cleansing that data, importing that data becomes a real difficulty. And that is where they just don't know where to go and don't know what to do about it.
Do you perceive? I mean, I think when I talk about things like that, I always think that perhaps the dealer groups, the larger entities, kind of get that they have a problem more than the smaller ones. I'm not sure they actually necessarily deal with the problem any better. But is it perceived through the trade that right from the largest to the smallest, that data is a challenge and data is a problem? I mean, is it as a problem for the independent, for example, as it is for the large PLCs?
It is, and I suppose I hear a lot around, I suppose, the smallest end and the independent end saying that customer retention doesn't matter to them, and I'm amazed by that statement.
I think it's starting to change.
Yes, and the fact that actually they don't necessarily need to do data cleansing because the retention isn't something that really bothers them, so they don't need to know whether that person is still owning the car or whether they've died or moved address, or and obviously in the independent world, safety recalls don't matter to them, so it's not an opportunity, as bigger opportunity anyway, to drive lapsed customers back into their dealership. But ultimately, it is still a huge headache for the larger dealer groups as well. It's actually a far more expensive and difficult problem to overcome if you're a large dealership. If you're a small dealership, it might only cost 500 quid to cleanse your entire usable database. And that's an important part around saying, okay, well, you don't need to look at your entire database, because actually, if you haven't seen somebody for more than 7 years, from your privacy notices perspective, are you actually allowed to be contacting them? So why does it matter that they changed their car or their MOT date is wrong or whatever else? Actually, if you just focus on those last 7 years, your bill is a lot lower. Yeah. So it's a lot more difficult, a lot more easy to manage.
I mean, that brings two questions to mind straight away. I think the first one, you've mentioned the word cost. But I think, do dealers actually recognise that their database is an asset, and that asset has an actual pound notes of value, and therefore this isn't a cost, it's actually an investment in that asset and adding value to that asset? Is that I mean, I know from my history that lots of dealers historically have seen the cost of that and struggle to see value. And I think a lot of that is because they don't have a pounds, shillings and pence, if you in old terms, value of what that asset actually is worth to them.
I completely agree. And when you're looking at probably your most valuable asset, which is your database, yes, of course, they've got buildings and people and whatever else as part of that asset structure. But actually knowing who all these people are in your database, how do you then contact these people? How do you know that they are the right people to contact? How do you know when to contact them? How do you manage that retention strategy, that whole CRM world of relationship management? Unless you know more about them, and we'll talk today, I'm sure, about data segmentation and knowing which bucket to put these people into. It's not necessarily just this huge database that should be in one pot. It becomes even more valuable if you know everything about this database. And people don't really understand. Again, comes back to, is it in the too difficult part?
Yeah.
Is it too difficult to actually start segmenting that data?
Yeah.
And what people need to try to understand is it's not. It's not a difficult thing to do, to realize the true value of that database.
The second question that jumped into my mind during a lot of that is, obviously data has a value, and I think, I mean, for me, I like to draw parallels with dealers to things like, Facebook or Google or, a lot of the social media companies, where inherently their whole asset value is the value of their users. It's massive. Facebook has a multi-hundred billion dollar value, which is purely driven by the asset value of their customer base, people who are using the platform. And I think that starts to sink in. But I think the other one that always strikes me, and I have conversations with dealers all the time as well, is when you talk about archiving data, deleting data from your database. They kind of like go, deleting data, that's getting rid of value. And I know I always tell them that deleting data that your database doesn't have an equal value. There's obviously the high value, the good value customers. If you can get rid of the dross, and you mentioned it, people who haven't been in the dealership for 5, 6, 7 years, people who probably have changed their cars, and you're writing to them or marketing them on purely invalid basis. Are you seeing that dealers are starting to understand much more that value of just actually having 10,000 good customer records is much better than having 100,000 where the value, where the data is uncertain?
Absolutely. It's the opportunity cost. As far as the amount of time and wastage there is trying to contact or not contacting people where the data is inaccurate. So whether that is the simplicity of an MOT date and trying to send reminders out at the wrong time for an MOT date. If you have all of that data that's incorrect in your database, then there is that inaccuracy. But then if you're contacting people who sold their car 2 years ago and you might phone them, or I've heard cases of huge amounts of money spent writing to people.
Yes.
And sending service reminders out and sending MOT reminders out, and they sold their car 5 years ago. Reputational damage of that, when people constantly get those reminders through the post, even though they sold their car years ago. The actual cost of all of that postage going out and sending those letters out, and then the opportunity cost if you've got a call center or just a service advisor constantly spending time chasing people up who are
never going to come in anyway.
They're never going to come in. So all of that wastage is huge.
Yeah. So
it is really important to have those viable data records in your database that you do segment, and you contact them at the right times about the right things.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, if you've got a dealer, I'll give some examples. We in my day job at Navigator, we migrate customer databases from one system to another. From their old system to existing system. And what I often see is we're just taking data that from that system, and we'll see that some of that data came from the system previous to that, and there are tens and thousands and thousands of records, and just looking at it, it's dross. It's not they're all dross, but 90% of that database is, you might as well just dump it. It has no value. Are dealers aware, though, that obviously that's relatively easy because they can look at their own history? Are dealers aware of some of the technology and what's available to then take the data they've got and actually improve that and add quality to it beyond that?
I don't think so.
That would be my contention. They probably don't know it.
Absolutely. Because it comes back to how can we enhance that data? How can, just at a very simplistic level, how can we get the right MOT dates allocated to each of those customer records? So we've had examples, and I've seen examples of databases where 70% of the database has got the wrong MOT date.
Yeah, that's just amazing, because I'm sure everybody's aware that you can go straight to the DVSA site, type in a registration number, and it will tell you next MOT date. So it's very, very easy on a one-by-one basis to check an MOT date. But I don't think many dealers, and certainly in my experience, many dealers are aware that actually there shouldn't be a record in your database with a historical MOT date. If it's got an historical, the only reason it may have a historical MOT date is it no longer has a current MOT, or it's probably been scrapped.
Yes,
is the most likely scenario. And I see that 70% of your data hasn't got an MOT date, because, to be fair, for a lot of dealers, particularly in the franchise dealer, that's probably the first service work that you'll lose, because always to perceive that they can go somewhere else to get an MOT cheaper, better. That's not necessarily the truth, but certainly I think customer perception is that. And if you let the dealer customer lapse and don't then start sending them MOT reminders, well, you're never going to get those customers back into the dealership.
No, and there's stats galore to back all that up.
Mm-hmm.
There's stats around. There's something in the press just a few weeks ago to say if you lose that customer after 3 years, so let's say you maintain that relationship for 3 years, but then lose it, the probability is that you'll lose almost £6,000 worth of profit from that customer, because they're not then going to come back for next lot of service. They're not going to come back for the next sale. They're not going to come back for that constant relationship management with that customer.
Yeah,
So that's a huge opportunity cost.
I don't think the great thing about an MOT date is it's a certain, every vehicle has to have an MOT. Whereas you can argue, well, my car doesn't need a service yet. Whilst you might claim as a dealer, yes, you need to get your car serviced, particularly when it's in warranty, you can make that claim. But as it goes out of warranty, it becomes a little bit less of a requirement and more of a almost a luxury item. I can make a decision whether I get my car serviced or not. MOT has to be MOT. It can't, it's not road legal without it. Absolutely. And it's much easier to capture, retain a customer on that data point than it is on a lot of the other data points that you can have in there.
And you can learn from other countries as well, as far as stats we've heard over in the States around if you have 5 visits, for customer visits you 5 times after they buy the car from you, 70% of those, you're 70% more likely to sell them a car.
It's almost back to the kind of the marketing. I'll put our marketing hat on for a second. The old marketing adage is to sell something, you need 7 points of contact with that customer. But the same thing happens to an existing customer to a limited degree, and you've got that opportunity to keep those contacts going through the lifetime. And of course, it's much cheaper to retain a customer than it is to get a new one. I mean, they're straightforward marketing speak stuff in there. Going there. What else? I mean, we've talked about MOT dates. What else can the dealer actively do to improve his database, give him a better connection with his customer?
There's all sorts of what we would call vehicle cleansing, other vehicle cleansing. So do all these customers in your database still own the car that you think they do? So you sold them a car 4 years ago. Has there been a change of keeper since that date? Okay. So then again, it's a case of you're not looking to delete those customers, but you treat them differently because you now know that they no longer own that car.
So that's coming back to your segmentation concept. Yeah. This customer is no longer a service prospect for that car, but therefore he's in a segment of somebody who may well still buy a car in the future, probably still owns a car, but we don't know which, and we can then put him into another bucket and he will get a different type of marketing, which is probably more appropriate to him in there.
Yes, absolutely. And then you're into that whole data segmentation and having the same, if you're happy, for example, to give 25% off your next service or 50% off an MOT, and you're happy to do that for any of your customers, be they lapsed customers, current customers, frequent customers, then you can put them into different buckets and you can then start to say, right, here we go, Mr. Customer, you haven't been in to see us for 2 years. We'll give you 25% off to persuade you to come back.
Yep.
Or you're a frequent customer, you come in every year, we'll give you 25% off because of your great loyalty to us.
So you're giving them the same similar discount, but you're giving them for a different reason. One's for loyalty, one's to trying to re-engage with somebody who's elapsed.
And if you find out that they've sold their car, then it's a case of a slightly different message again to be able to then say, here's 25% off because you're a lapsed customer. Now, it's how you message that. There's all sorts of different messages you can put because you don't want to become Big Brother. You don't want to look like you know that you've sold the car.
Yeah, I mean, I have that. I mean, I think we have that. I have that concept We use that in the, obviously in sales environment. Obviously you can track customers on the websites. Never ring the customer and say, "Oh, I've seen you've been on our website in the last 5 minutes." That's going to scare the life out of them.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept. You can't
have you changed? Do you still own the car?
Yeah.
Or your car ABC 123 is due an MOT. Do you still own it?
Yeah.
Knowing very well that they don't, but
Yeah.
then that doesn't look like you do know. So you can have that messaging out to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, taking the extension, obviously having the right data and having it cleansed, having it segmented is the first part of it. You then got to think very hard about what messages you want to send to each segment as well, to get that right thing, that right item in there. We've talked about the value of the data asset. We've talked about, I guess, the value of kind of investing in that data to keep it clean. We've talked about MOT. We've talked about things like keeper change. And I know there are plenty of other things you can do. So, for example, I know if a customer moves house and he moves out of the area and is in a postcode the other end of the country, you're probably less likely to get him in for service than somebody who lives around the corner.
Different segmentation.
So again, you can segment the customer based on that. But if a dealership did nothing, I think a lot of dealers would go, well, I won't cleanse the data. I won't invest in that. I know what, I'll just keep blasting out emails or sending out a few letters or do text message campaigns. I know that, dealers are doing that, all of those things in our system all the time. And the cost is, the cost of sending an email out isn't that expensive. What is the cost of not doing it, not doing the data cleanse, just going, we'll just carry this lump of data around with us? Because obviously it's not necessarily a pound notes cost where the money's leaking out of the dealership. Where is that cost of doing nothing?
There's a pound note cost of what we talked about already, as far as the wastage of time spent chasing people up that have got dirty data. But I think there is a reputational cost. Every time I know people who have got private plates on cars, and you receive your MOT reminder at the right time, but it says it has the wrong plate on it.
Yeah.
And why don't they know that that's my plate? They sold me the car. Why? That's ridiculous. And I think there is actually you could argue and start to discuss, and we're having this conversation all the time about the culture of the company that you're working for, and the getting the right people and understanding the efficiencies of those people working in your business. If the culture is a data accuracy culture, then you're getting the right people into your business, and it's then not just about actually how they operate data; it's how they operate on a day-to-day life.
Yeah, I mean,
and you then have really good people in who are doing the right things at the right time.
It does amaze me that I know, I often comment, if I ring a mobile phone company, the gas company, electricity company, the big utilities, and if I ring them for any reason, to query a bill, to renew my contract, whatever it is, before I can talk to anybody about anything, they're always going to say, can check your mobile number? Is still your email address? They're always using that opportunity to cleanse that data. They have that A in their culture, B in their processes. And you very rarely ever see that in a dealership. And I remember, for example, I change my car quite regularly, and I move house, or used to move house quite a lot as well. But I always used to use the same dealership. And I used to remember every time I went into the dealership, the job card printed out with my old address on it. And I'd point it out, and they would scribble over it in pen and write my new address. Same with my mobile number, they would scribble my old number out and write it on. And then next time I came in, it hadn't changed. It was still exactly the same. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that culture has kind of got through into the dealership, that you're spending a lot of money. You've got this asset of your database. You've got people who are actually communicating with the dealership day in, day out, and it's still wrong after that process.
And I can't put an actual number on it because every dealer's different. But if you're an MO, assuming you've got a workshop and you've got an MOT bay or multiple MOT bays, the average cost of an MOT, the actual invoice value of an MOT is over £200 these days
Mm-hmm.
from the upsell opportunities that come from it.
Yep.
And if you're sending an MOT reminder out 6 weeks after the MOT was actually due, because your data is wrong in your database,
Yep.
what chance have you got of getting that customer in for that MOT?
Even worse, if you're sending it to the wrong email address.
Wrong email address, wrong address generally.
Yeah.
But there are lots of reasons why you might be contacting that person at the wrong time. But that is a huge opportunity cost gone. That you're if you are able to get MOTs done at the right, or send reminders out at the right time for an average invoice value of £200 each time,
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge amount of wastage.
It's just literally
everyone,
lost.
Everyone can do their own maths there.
Yeah,
£200 multiplied by a number of customers that you think you've got. That's what you're missing out on.
No, absolutely. If you miss the MOT opportunity, it's not just the MOT, which many dealers will consider perhaps the MOT itself as being not profitable. But obviously the upsell from that is, and it's impossible to generate the value of the customer retention from that. Because, if you have your customer coming in every year for his MOT, if something goes wrong with his car in between, who's he going to call? He's going to come to you as well, isn't it? Whereas if you've let him lapse his MOT to somebody else, whoever that is, that person's also going to be the people that he contacts first rather than you.
Yeah.
I like that. One thing you've mentioned quite a lot, and I doubt that most dealers are aware of the opportunity, and this is mainly, I think, in the franchise sector more than not, is the opportunity of the recall. I know a lot of the franchise dealers will kind of think, well, recall is done by the franchise; they do that themselves. But how does what is the power of the recall? What can be done today on recalls that perhaps couldn't have been done a year, 2, 5 years ago?
Well, again, it comes back to reasons to get the customer into your workshop, and I know from talking to a lot of franchise dealers, they see a recall as a pain, not an opportunity.
Yes,
you have different franchises that have different attitudes towards a recall, and you have sometimes thousands of recalls and a campaign that has thousands of cars on it, and a lot of those are just checks as opposed to actual work that needs to be definitely carried out. But it's another reason to bring that customer into your workshop to carry that check out.
And the beauty, of course, is that if you do it properly, it's almost 100% guaranteed to get the customer in.
Completely. And again, but doing it at the right time. So if you know a campaign's gone out and you don't want to inundate your workshop with a load of 5-minute checks for maybe only 10% of them actually with work to carry out, don't contact everybody at the same time. Put them back into that MOT bucket. Contact them at the same time as the MOT is due, because then that's another reason for them to definitely come in for the MOT at your workshop.
So it gives them the ability. So it kind of can be used to improve the MOT offering. Because if you're a franchise dealer and you're sending them a letter saying, just let you know your MOT's due, they'll go, oh, thanks for that. I'll ring Fred down in the shed at the bottom of the road, get me MOT done. Thanks, mate. Whereas if you're saying something along the lines of, oh, by the way, did you know your MOT was due? And whilst your MOT was being done, we've actually also got these recalls we could do at the same time. Now you've just excluded Fred in the shed to doing the work. He's got to come to you as his franchise dealer to come and get those recalls done. And now the value of that is just massively enhanced.
Massively enhanced, and it also enhances your workshop management as well, because you're not just bringing a car in for potentially a 5-minute check. You're bringing a car in, yes, to have the 5-minute check, but at the same time, you can have the MOT done. So you're then therefore bringing it in for a half-hour job as opposed to a 5-minute check job.
And I guess going back to that data segmentation concept, treating recalls on a customer that hasn't been in the dealership for 2 or 3 years, i.e. somebody who is probably not going to respond to a service and MOT reminder, because if he was, he would have done last year.
Yep.
The recall gives you a valuable way of engaging with that becomes increasingly larger sector over the years of people who you've lost to the after sales, getting them back into there, so you can kind of go, let you know your car's due a recall, book it in, bring it in for the recall, and then you've then got the opportunity to re-engage with them and go, well, okay, why haven't we got your service work or your OT work? What can we do to get you back in? And you're then bringing somebody who is lost to the dealership back in, and you're making some money while you're doing it, albeit only at warranty rates.
Yes, absolutely. But the numbers are astounding sometimes. When you look at a database of customers, or potential customers or lapsed customers, then you're looking at a database and saying, okay, well, we've seen numbers where 20% of the lapsed customers have got an outstanding recall.
And we've often talked about already that in a database, 70% of your database may be lapsed customers. So therefore, 20% of that is a fifth of 70%. You're talking at a 20%, 17, 18% of your database, which is probably tens of thousands of records, even in the smallest of dealerships, are there ready to be re-engaged with and bring back into the dealership.
And they can't go to a fast fit centre for the recall.
Yeah, precisely that. Yeah, I mean, they can see the value of that massively. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also is there a hidden value to the recall database when you're in the sales opportunity appraising a used vehicle? And I'm thinking on the lines of, I think a lot of dealers complain that, the time to prep a vehicle to be retailed when they bring it into stock becomes massive if that's got a recall. So if it's not in your own franchise and you've got another franchise, another make of car here, and it's got a recall, you're in the same boat that the customer was. You've got to send that car to another dealership for the recall to be done. You can't realistically sell a car with an outstanding recall.
Yep.
So being armed with that data earlier on in the process can change your buying decision, how much you want to spend on that car at that point, and therefore can save you being lumbered with a car that is just aging because you can't sell the thing.
I completely agree. It's a very much at point of appraisal, knowing as much as you possibly can about the car is so important. And if you're doing a spec check on the car and understanding that it's got that option, and that option, then that's all about understanding the true value of the car and understanding what you're going to be able to give as a part exchange. And that's all potentially looking at upside and saying, well, actually, yes, it's got that option, so therefore I'm happy to spend £500 or give £500 more for it. But actually, in the completely opposite end of the spectrum, if it's got an outstanding recall, you should be taking money off it because it's going to take you time and effort to be able to understand what that recall is.
And the good thing, of course, is that realistically, you can have a good, sensible conversation with the prospect and explain why that car's got less value. And realistically, he knows that's probably going to have the same less value wherever he goes. Yeah. It's not a case of you like to lose it on the basis of that because it has devalued his car. Another thing we talked about customer databases. There's always that problem of kind of what I consider to be the single source of truth. And, I speak to dealers all the time of all sizes, and I think they all have the same problem to various degrees, where their database is just scattered. They have customer data in different systems. They have, a CRM system. They have a DMS system. They might have some sort of finance compliance system with customer data in, and it's all got the different data. One's been updated, one hasn't. Do you perceive that that's getting worse now? I think as more expert systems come into the dealership.
Completely. There are so many different systems, and almost every single one of those has got some kind of customer database. and then the integration of those systems aren't necessarily as strong as they could be. Now, as a data man, I might not necessarily always say that it has to be the DMS that is a single point of truth, but I would say almost certainly most of the time it needs to be, because what else would it be?
I mean, it's certainly, I think, the largest data point.
Yeah.
I would think, and I kind of follow the line that you're taking. I always recommend to dealers, and I'm surprised that more dealers don't put that as a requirement in their buying checklists, that goes that if they're buying new software, and there's nothing wrong with buying expert software to do specific tasks, but I know a lot of dealers talk about the integration of process, how hard, I think of the sales process where you watch a sales guy flip from system to system to system. Dealers are starting to recognize the loss of value and the customer pain that is inherently felt secondhand by the sales exec having to go through those systems. But I don't necessarily think that dealers are actually recognizing that the end result, that your data is being spread around as well, and saying, well, actually, part of the process of adding a new system in has got to be, we need to maintain that single source of data, because then everything we talk about, segmentation of data, cleansing of data, becomes much more diluted and much less valuable overall.
Completely. And the most important thing from my side as a data person is that single point of truth is somewhere. If they don't have it somewhere, then you can't manage data properly. We've talked about MOT a lot in the last half an hour or so. But if you have an MOT date in one system that says one thing, and an MOT date that says something else somewhere else, and you have a customer name saying one thing in one system and a VRM saying something else somewhere else,
or an email address in one system that's different to the email address in the other,
it's just impossible to manage.
Yeah.
So you have to have that single point of truth. The DMS is, I would say, for a small, medium-sized dealer, the DMS is the only way to go. If you're a big dealer group where you might have multiple DMS providers, or certainly multiple different databases, because you've acquired databases, you might look for a customer database platform or a data lake and all of these areas. But
that's only for the big. That's for the really. That's a big investment for.
That's a massive investment
for the big PLCs.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to come down.
The DMSs feeding. Then you have your DMSs and your after sales systems and your sales systems and all your CRM systems, all feeding into one single point of truth.
Yep.
But as far as the small medium dealer group is concerned, then the DMS is that
core,
magic box that everyone needs to be using.
I can only agree with that, obviously. That's my background. Moving on, AI. We haven't talked about. I think it's the first conversation I've had with anybody that's lasted more than 20 minutes where we've not yet talked about AI. But AI it's hard to get away from. Every conversation has it. Every dealership is thinking of, or should be thinking about, consuming AI. And I know that I always preach that AI is just generic large language model, unless you've got some very, very good connected data to back that up. And I think just sort of coming back to what we've spoken about so far, the future where we're looking to use our database with AI. If it's crap data, your AI is also then going to be junk.
Yeah. There's not a huge amount of difference when it comes to looking at the wastage argument, whether you're talking about wastage within a call center or within an after-sales department or a sales department. You've still got people. Without AI, you've got people wasting time. If you then go out and invest in AI and the cost of that, there's always a cost of AI. So why would you then, if you've got a voice AI as one example, and you're paying per minute for that voice AI to be going out and contacting people, why are you therefore happy to pay per minute for them to contact somebody who no longer owns a car that you thought they did?
Yeah. And obviously, then and I think the other thing, of course, if you think about reputational risk, which we've talked about, sending a few letters out, there is, people get used to going and getting a letter, okay, putting that in the bin. It's a low but real reputation risk. When your phone rings and somebody says, I'm looking to book your Vauxhall Insignia in for a service, and he goes, I sold that 5 years ago, the reputational risk, because you've got that intrusion, is obviously much, much higher. It's just,
And AI is very, very good at following things up.
Yes.
Because that's why you invest in it.
Yeah.
So if AI constantly, rather than one phone call into somebody who no longer owns a car or the wrong MOT date, or all the things we've spoken about today, it does 5.
Or emails, it's the same thing.
It's really good at the follow-up. Then reputationally, it's going to get even worse.
Yeah, I mean, at least if you've got one human in your dealership making phone calls every day, they're probably going to talk to 10 people, probably, realistically, no matter how many times they pick the phone up. But if you've got a voice agent that can make literally dozens, thousands of calls a minute in an hour, that is just multiplied up so much higher in there. That's great. We've talked a lot about data, quality, systems. There's a lot of things that dealers can do today. There's lots of, if you were talking to a dealer today, so somebody listening or watching this podcast, and you were to go to something that you were to say to them, what are 3 things that are easy, cheap and quick to do today that have a really good payback? What would those be, those 3 things?
I would say, first thing, improve the data culture of your organization. So make data a KPI in everything.
Think of it as an asset that needs to be maintained,
but also measure how good it is.
Yep.
So and ensure that within that culture there's an updating culture of data. Don't accept the fact that a salesperson, an after sales agent, doesn't put data in, and misses out on a service date, or doesn't put an MOT date into the database, doesn't follow up with that data accuracy.
Yep.
Because as soon as things start getting missed, the culture is therefore then there. An inaccurate culture is being spread around the entire business. So make sure that culture is right from tomorrow. Do something to understand that where you are from a data accuracy perspective.
Yeah.
And that is number 2 on my list. Get an audit done.
See what you've got. You can't see how big the problem is as you look.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So understand how many email addresses am I missing? How many phone numbers am I missing? How many MOT dates are wrong? How many cars are no longer owned by the keeper? How many addresses are wrong? How many unfortunate dead people are there in my database?
A lot.
All of this can be measured really, really quickly with an audit that can take place. And that then drives that accuracy of data, drives the culture, understands where the opportunities lie with those databases.
And number 3,
stop doing nothing.
Doing nothing's absolutely not an option.
Don't do nothing. Don't take it off the too difficult pile. It isn't too difficult.
It comes into that how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Take that first bite. Do something.
Yes, absolutely. And the systems that are now out there, the DMS providers are now able to help with that segmentation, help with that ability to be able to contact people at the right time about the right thing in the right way, have different messaging available based on which bucket you fall into as a customer, or the customer falls into. Those systems are now out there to be able to help with all of that. But you can't do any of that unless your data's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, John, making data an interesting subject is not easy, but I think we've done it.
We've tried.
Thank you very much for joining me on Dealer Tech Talk. If anybody wants to contact John, his contact details will be in the show notes. And I would certainly recommend that if you're not sure what to do today, picking the phone up to John is probably a good thing to do. Definitely. Thanks for listening to Dealer Tech Talk. Don't forget to subscribe on your normal channels, on your normal podcasts. This podcast has been sponsored by DMS Navigator and Motor Companion. And till next time, thank you.
Thank you.
John,